Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here and thank everyone behind me for being here. This really is, I think, a very important occasion in the city of Seattle, but also, I think, across this country to show that we can bring equity and justice and fair wages to the gig economy. And we're starting right here in Seattle with our drivers, right?
Yes.
We have seen with our rapidly changing economy that the way people work has changed enormously. And more, the protections that unions have given workers for decades has been eroded, and people are working more and more jobs that they are not getting minimum wage. They're not considered employees. They don't have sick and safe time off, and they bear all of the risks of the job. We know that that's not right. We know to have a strong middle class, we need workers to be protected and to have strong wages and strong benefits. They need to know that they've got a future for them and their families. This legislation is about building that more just economy, and I have to thank all the people behind me for their contribution to that. I have to thank the City Council for taking this legislation up and getting it through so quickly to stand for this level of justice in our community. You know, not only are we going to make sure that drivers get minimum wage and get fair compensation for their expenses, but with the fee that we're charging, we are going to make a difference in two major areas in Seattle. One, more affordable housing, particularly around transit, so people who work in Seattle can live in Seattle, right? Yeah. We also will generate enough funding to fund the streetcar, the city center connector, and we'll have over 500 units of housing. Our goal is twofold. The first is to set a model to make sure that drivers actually can earn minimum wage. The second is to create a new place where workers can take complaints and have those disputes resolved quickly and fairly, where they know they've got support and advocates for them. The Dispute Resolution Center is going to be one of the key components of this legislation moving forward. We are now going, as people know, the study is underway to look at what is a fair wage for drivers. It's a complicated process because there's different phases that drivers experience. They have it when they call P3 time, which is when people are actually in the car. There's the P2 time when they've accepted the call, and then P1 when they're waiting. Drivers work really long hours, and most of them are not being paid minimum wage because they have to work several hours just to get 1 hour of wages. We know that this is fair. We know that Uber and Lyft, as public companies, have the money to pay their drivers fairly. We know that so many in our community rely on this. We also know that having fair wages and having access to transportation and to housing is critical for our community, particularly for people who are differently abled and know they need to get around. There's a number of people that deserve thanks. Again, I got to thank the City Council for stepping up. But Nicole Grant and the whole MLK Labor Council, thank you for all you've done. Alex Hudson of Transportation Choices, was she able to make it? Yeah, she couldn't make it. Patience for all you did. Thank you. You were there at the start. You're here now. We literally would not be here if it weren't for Teamsters Local 116. I got to thank you guys for everything you've done on this. The Streetcar Coalition put their shoulder to the wheel, no pun intended, and helped get this done. And also the Downtown Seattle Association and the GSBA stood up and saw that this wasn't just labor, but business came together and saw that this was the right thing to do. I already want to thank our housing allies, particularly Marty of HCC. Thanks for everything you're doing. Where are you? There you are, back there. Yours is so tall I can find you immediately. So with that, we'll sign the legislation, then take any questions. People have been working on this a very long time, and this legislation is really the result of efforts over a long period of time that we're finally able to do it. Yes! I won't do them with all of them, don't worry. She's like, get it done. Get it done, Mayor. Thank you. You know, you could work here. In fact, why don't you sign it? We'll make it real.
We trust you.
It is now the law of Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much, everybody. I've taken a couple questions if anybody has any.
I do have one. I wanted to ask, just to clarify, does this call for the creation of benefits like paid sick time, unemployment, or is that what's going to be?
So here's what we're going to do. We have a study underway, and that study is going to look at a range of things, which is what do we need to do to make sure that when drivers are driving, they're getting fair compensation. So we're going to look at both minimum wage, enough that people will have enough safe and sick time to take off without risking their jobs or their livelihood, and looking at what is the real cost to drivers in driving. Because expenses is really expenses. They usually own or lease their cars, they pay for all the gasoline, all the wear and tear on the automobile, that's on the driver's back. So we want to make sure that when drivers get in a car and they are giving a very concrete benefit to those large companies, that those companies actually make sure those drivers get their fair share. Thank you, everybody.